what was this? Sometimes when I don't look at these all the time, I lose what the heck I was even looking at to begin with. Oh, right here. Look at this. This is some kind of an artificial installation that has been built. Here's a perfect square. Here's perfect right angles. Here are two arches. Here is an arch that goes over something that goes underneath it. What is it? I don't know. But I can assure you that it is artificial. It is not natural. Next. Look at how this has been flattened out here. And I think there was some domes or something here, if I remember correctly. I can't see it now. Next. And next. Now this is the photograph that I took of the base across the crater. See the tower? We're looking all the way across the crater Copernicus, and you can still see that tower sticking up. That's how big it is. That's what caught my eye. And then I began to take macro photographs. It wasn't until we really developed the film that we knew that we had anything from that, because this is the photograph that I was photographing. That's why NASA put it in the book. They overlooked it. Next. That's Kepler again. Next. That's the crater Copernicus. That's the one. This is the photograph that I took the pictures over there. The last one you looked at was a close-up of about this area. And the close-ups that you saw where the base was were right in here. Next. That's the one, remember, we talked about, we didn't know what it was. It looked like a bulldozer had run back and forth inside the crater. Next. 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 Boulders, downhill, moonquakes. There's the Christian cross. This is the base again. These are the buildings in here. Next. These are photographs of Mars, ladies and gentlemen. What you're looking at is agricultural terracing. Ancient agricultural terracing. You can follow each terrace all the way around. NASA says this is wind erosion. But NASA tells us that Mars doesn't have any appreciable atmosphere, only 1% as dense as Earth's. Next. Next. These lines are exactly like the lines on Nazca, and you can see that each line carves into the lip of that crater. Next. Here you can see the face on Mars. Up here you can see an arrow in the surface of Mars. See it? Over here you can see pyramids. What we call the fort. We don't know what it is. Incredible? Damn right it is. Look at this plateau with these buildings on top of it. Next, or whatever they are. Another view. Next. Under computer enhancement, the face has eyeballs and also has teeth. Up here, I was reading this book, which is the Encyclopedia of Space or something put out by NASA, and this covers Mars. And on here I noticed this Mars airplane, robotic surface exploration, Mars airplane. What are they talking about? They told me Mars only has an atmosphere 1/100th as dense as the Earth, yet they're preparing to build a Mars airplane? Well, maybe my concept of a plane is wrong. Let's pursue it a little further. Next. There's an official NASA photograph of the Mars airplane that they intend to build. If what they tell us about the atmosphere of Mars is true, this airplane will not fly in the atmosphere of Mars. It's absolutely impossible. Look at the nose of that airplane, ladies and gentlemen. You will see a propeller spinning. Next. Now, this confirms the alternative 3 scenario. Franklin D. Martin, NASA's Associate Administrator for Exploration, has the host of reasons for sending humans to Mars, but after he gives all those reasons, he says, science is one of the reasons you do these things, but it's not the driver. The driver is the survival of the human race. Next. These are some more of those lines like Nazca on Mars. Here you see the arrow. Next. Next. Oh. Okay, let's go back one and change slide trays. We're almost through the slides and we can get into some serious stuff. Robin Quayle told me if I came to Georgia and did this, that she would take me to dinner tonight. But I think she left already. This is the face on Mars again. Look at that square crater right next to the arrow. We measured the arms of this arrow and the length across it. It's a perfect triangle in here, and these arms are exactly the same length. The chances of that being a natural occurrence are almost zero. I imagine there's some remote chance, but I certainly wouldn't give that much credence. Next. And look at this down here. It's almost boat-shaped with what appear to be buildings on top. They may not be buildings. We can't get perfect 90-degree angles on it, but that could have been eroded away over who knows how many centuries. Next. The black dots. Those are places where the spacecraft was sending back the information and it didn't make it to Earth. They're not freckles, they're not painted dots on Mars, they're just where the bits of information didn't make it from the spacecraft to the Earth. Yeah, the face is approximately 1 mile across. Next. I really don't know, ma'am. I try not to guess at things, especially if it doesn't even remotely look like what we might guess it might be. You have to understand, when we're trying to interpret something totally alien to this Earth, we have to understand the concept of what the word alien means. What we might perceive as a landing strip might be a carnival to them. Who knows? Look at this. This is the Martian probe that we landed in 1976, I believe. And it took this picture of something flowing from up here down to here. Could be sand. Sand does flow under the right circumstances, or it could be water. If that's flowing water, then that's significant. If it's sand, it means nothing. Next. Government scientists call newly discovered heavenly object a stray asteroid. Sounds kind of interesting, doesn't it? Until you read the subhead. Astronomers worldwide in disagreement with official explanation call phenomenon an intelligently guided object. London Evening Standard. I think that's 7/10/60, page 3. Next. Now, if you won't believe all this other stuff, how many people in here believe that Gordon Cooper, the astronaut, is a credible individual? Can I see a show of hands? He's an astronaut. He's also a colonel in the United States Air Force. Now he's retired. He wrote this letter to the United Nations, and in the first paragraph he says, "I wanted to convey to you my views on our extraterrestrial visitors, popularly referred to as UFOs, and suggest what might be done to properly deal with them." Certainly. I was waiting for the gasps to die away. I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets, which obviously are a little more technically advanced than we are here on Earth. I feel that we need to have a top-level coordinated program to scientifically collect and analyze data from all over the Earth concerning any type of encounter and determine how best to interface with these visitors in a friendly fashion. What's another reason for a one-world government? I'll tell you why. If people can't get on a bus with black people without causing incidents, if they can't accept a Chinese person who moves into their neighborhood because they're a chink, how in the hell are we going to interface with a completely alien race from another planet? Okay, next slide. This is in my book too. A lot of this stuff is in my book with a lot of stuff that you're not seeing here. In fact, there's a lot of stuff in my book that nobody has ever seen before in their life outside the secret government. This is an accident report that occurred at Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota. 7 miles southwest of Niland, South Dakota. They got an alarm situation that at a missile site called L9, there had been a security breach. They sent a SAT team out that consisted of Airman First Class Jenkins and Airman First Class Reiki. They were a SAT alert team, or security alert team called SAT. Next slide. When they got out there, they saw these crazy little guys running around in silver suits with helmets on their head and something hovering real bright above the missile silo. Reiki went up the hill, challenged them, told them to stop. They didn't stop. He raised his M16, and they blasted him with some kind of a light, melted his M16. They never even found a piece of it, and gave him second and third degree burns all over his hands and arms. He called back to Jenkins, who came from the vehicle. Jenkins saw 2 of them, fired at both of them, hit one in the helmet, one in the chest. They both fell to the ground. A few seconds later, got up and ran off and went up into this craft, which zoomed away into the sky. Further investigation showed that the nuclear components of the warhead was missing from the missile. Next. And next. UFO photographed over Disneyland, that's it down there. In the space of clicking the shutter of the camera, this thing moved back and forth about 12 times and then caught it here. That's how fast it was moving. And the reason I included this, because while people who go to Disneyland may be interested in fantasy, they're usually families, they're usually middle-class people, they're usually respectable, they're usually credible, and thousands of them saw this. Next. There it is. That's incredibly fast when you figure that during the time the shutter snapped, it moved back and forth that many times. Next. This is a Billy Myers picture. One of the things that I think is incredibly suspicious about his still photographs is they're always sticking out of the tree. However, I must caution you because he has produced some movie film which is incredible. It's been analyzed by different countries, different people, different scientists. They can find nothing wrong with it. Shows craft way out in the distance with trees in between, flying over cars that are moving on the ground and all kinds of things. Next. This is one sitting on the ground. Looks like, never mind. Next. This is a drawing that an abductee made of the craft that they were supposedly abducted and taken up into. Next. This is one of the best of the historical, genuine photographs of UFOs that exists. Because of the different things in the photograph, you're able to obtain perspective, depth, and you're able to triangulate and compute the size and shape and distance away from the camera of the saucer. Next. This is another very good one. Next. This was over Phoenix, Arizona. It was seen by hundreds of people. Next. This was taken over Mount Rainier in 1948. It's original Kodachrome slide, which we made the prints from. And I made slides from the prints that we had then, and we also made 4x5 negatives and transparencies in case something ever happens to the slide. This was given to us by someone who works in the government whose identity cannot be revealed. This is perfectly symmetrical. It is not a meteor. It is moving exactly parallel to the ground. This is ionized air. It is not fire or flame. Next. This is commonly what's known as a lenticular cloud formation. This red haze over here is the test firing of a rocket at the Rocket 9 facility at the west end of the San Fernando Valley. I only know that because I used to live right on top of the mountain next to it. Next. Somebody's hat blew off. Next. Notice that photograph was taken by the local barber. These are photographs that were taken in New Mexico and Colorado during a particularly heavy, what they call a flap. There's a lot of sightings by a lot of people in one area. And there were a lot of photographs came out of that. These are some out of the newspaper. I tried to photograph them so that they can be identified as not something that I made up. I have been accused of being the most rotten bastard that ever lived, making up everything, and phoning photographs. So I have to be very careful. Next. This photograph was taken over London. It's one of my favorite. I have a degree in photography, and this is a very artistic photograph. It's a very rare photograph, and it is a very unusual subject, and I have to like it. Next. This is another part of what I call Project Snowbird, to make the public think that what they're seeing can be explained away by technology like this. And you saw some of it on the news about the war. They said they had things that can fly over the enemy and do recon with no pilot in them, so no loss of life if it gets shot down. That's what that is. Next. And next. And this is just about the Aurora spacecraft that they fly in Nevada. It's what they call a TAV, Trans-Atmospheric Vehicle, which literally takes off from Groom Lake, flies completely out of the atmosphere, can orbit the Earth, and I believe that it can do more than that, but that's where I'll leave it. Next. This is the first photograph that we had of the UFO over Mount Rainier taken in 1948. The man at first would not allow us to even touch the slide. So we took a camera and made a picture of the slide, blew up the slide, made a print, and made Polaroids from the print, and then we're photographing the Polaroid. That's how crazy we were getting, until finally he agreed to allow us to use the slide, and we were able to make the prints that we have and the transparencies and the 4x5 negatives to preserve that image. Next. We go through a lot of work to produce the material that we have. Believe me, it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of searching, sometimes it takes begging and pleading and everything else. Next. And next. Next. This is what's called a star-shaped object. This appeared in Omni magazine, and this is a photograph photographed of the photograph in Omni magazine. Next. Next. This is a classic UFO photograph. It's considered one of the best ever taken and is considered by every expert to be absolutely genuine. Next. This is the man who took Albert Einstein's place, Stephen Hawking's. How many of you read his book? Anybody here? I would suggest that you read it. Next. Another lenticular cloud formation. Is there really a cloud? Or could they possibly have the ability to generate what looks like a cloud around them? I don't have the answer to that question. Next. I read in documents when I was in naval intelligence that they do have the ability to generate clouds of what appears to be clouds around them. I guess water vapor. I have no idea in the world what those are except clouds. Next. And next. Is this what they're trying to make us believe is happening? So that we'll accept a one-world government, give up our freedoms, submit to totalitarian control? Is that the easiest way to control us so that we don't destroy the earth? Is that what this is all about? That, by the way, is from The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which was a classic horror film for the buffs. Next. And next. They do exist, folks. For those of you who thought they didn't, never saw any, they exist. This was taken from an airplane window. So you know that nobody threw a hubcap into the air. It's above the clouds. Next. This was taken by a tourist in Hawaii. He didn't even know that it was in the sky. He was taking a picture of these beautiful women, and it wasn't until he got the pictures back and he was showing his vacation photographs to a friend, or at least this is the story, that his friend said, "What's that?" And he said, "What?" "Oh, I never saw that." And this is a close-up. Next slide. Incredible. Next. Now, they say this is a UFO. I spent a lot of time in Vietnam, and it sure looks like a flare to me. Next. Anybody know what this is? This is the Russian space shuttle. What's it look like? It looks like the U.S. space shuttle. Now, I'm going to tell you something that for some of you is just going to shatter your whole world. The United States and the Soviet Union have been secret allies ever since World War II. And the guise of antagonism between us has been artificially produced to create large sums of money from the populations of both countries for experimental methods of controlling populations and to fund and carry on a joint space program to colonize the moon and Mars. Please don't hang me. But it's the truth. Every bit of technology that the Soviets have ever obtained has been given to them covertly by the United States of America. This is no accident. That is our space shuttle that we gave to them. The only thing is theirs has a little bit better technology in it because we experimented with ours first. We gave them the atomic bomb, and then we fried the Rosenbergs as scapegoats. Next. Next. These are a series of photographs put together from the Venus orbiter. The United States maintains that the atmosphere of Venus is so thick that we cannot take pictures of the surface of Venus, and cameras and film will not last, or cameras and TV cameras will not last on the surface of Venus to send back pictures. So they do what's called cloud-penetrating radar mapping, and that's what this is. For you hollow earth folks, there's a hole up there. I don't know what it means. Next. If any of you see this happening, please call me immediately. Next. This is a photograph of the Russian Venusian lander sitting on the surface of Venus, sending back pictures of a sun-drenched desert landscape. Somebody's lying. Immediately after the Russians released this photograph, officials and government people from Washington called a high-level meeting with the Russian space program people, and you never saw it again. Next. These are comparisons of the two, the Russian photographs and the photographs that we get. Now, I want to give you some food for thought. Recently, they had a flyby of Uranus. Remember that? And most of us were glued in the middle of the night to our TV set, hoping to see something strange that we'd never seen before and get a little bit of illumination from what was happening out in space. The target of the probe was the planet. Does anybody remember that? The target was the planet. The main interest for the flyby was the planet. What did we see? Anybody know? Did anybody stay up like I did and watch? We saw the moons of Uranus. We saw one long-range shot of the planet, and we never saw it again. But we saw the most incredible close-ups of the moons of Uranus that you could possibly hope for. Why? Why wouldn't they show us the planet? And it happened elsewhere also. Next. This is a book after its kind, and the documentation I saw, that symbol there was said to be the trilateral signal, or the trilateral symbol used by the aliens as their symbol. It literally means, in ancient writing, I found it finally. The first place I ever saw it, outside of the official documents, was on this book. The second place was in a Bible that contained a page of old ancient Christian symbols. And another one, I found a book in the library, I forget the book, but it was about symbology and symbols. And this is an ancient symbol that means mother and father with the children. See, these are two old symbols. You take this apart and you have a mother symbol and a father symbol, or a man and a woman symbol. Put them together, it's mother and father. It can also mean the process of reproduction. With a circle on one side, it means one child. With a circle on the other, it means two. This literally means mother and father with the children. The thesis for this book is a scientifically dependable yet popular analysis of the theory of evolution. In it, he inserts that there must have been some outside interbreeding or influence or genetic insertion into the human race to produce modern man. Next slide. This book was first written in 1927. Next. This is an article that just says how they can move technology, secret technology, from government laboratories into the world. Next. And next. Oh no, go back one. Go back one, please. Right here. This is a perfect illustration, folks. Look at this photograph, and you'll see that in the shadows there is no detail whatsoever. In space, without an atmosphere, there can be no detail in shadows, because the only thing that will produce light in shadows is diffusion of light through an atmosphere. Now, next photograph, which proves that this photograph was not taken on the moon. Or if it was taken on the moon, there is an atmosphere. Next. Oh, this was right after I gave my talk in Sedona, which I'm sure some of you know about. I was driving back the back roads because I wanted to see some of Arizona, because I had fallen in love with Arizona, and now I've moved there, and I'll show you how much I've fallen in love with it. And I saw this cloud form. There was nothing there. There was no cloud in the sky anywhere, and all of a sudden, bam, a saucer-shaped cloud right in front of my eyes. I stopped and took the next picture next to it, and it disappeared as equally, as quickly as it had formed. There was not another cloud in the sky. There's no lake. There's no water anywhere. It was incredible. I can't explain it, but it's certainly something worth looking into. Next. This is a drawing made by one of the students at the last college where I was the executive director. Stan was the head of the security department. Some of you know Stan Barrington. He's my only authorized representative in this world. Would put my life in his hands, and I have on several occasions. Stan was the head of the security department, and one of the students in the security curriculum was in trouble, was failing. Stan was counseling the student, and she drew this picture. And she drew, next slide, this, and next, this, and next, and these little guys. Now, she had no idea that I knew anything about UFOs or flying saucers. Nobody in the world did at that time. Stan didn't even know then, and I didn't even know then that Stan had guarded a flying saucer when he was in Delta Force in the Army. But Stan brought me these things, and he said, "You ever seen anything like this?" And I said, "I don't know, Stan, where'd you get it?" And he told me, and we brought the girl into my office and sat her down, and I began to try to find out why she was failing and where this stuff came from, and it turns out she had a year of missing time. A whole year out of her life she could not account for, and she couldn't concentrate on anything, and that's why she was failing. Next. This was drawn by Krista Tilton. Notice the similarity. My student had never seen Krista Tilton in her life, never read a UFO book, didn't know anything about any of this. Next. 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 This is Aviation Week and Space Technology, November 21st, 1988. Write that down because somebody's going to ask me. November 21st, 1988. You can find it in used bookstores and libraries. Next picture. In which this ad appeared, talking about technology so advanced it will help answer some big question, and on the facing page, what's there? This picture. On the side of the neck, there's hair growing. We did extensive analysis of this photograph. We rephotographed it, we relit it, we blew it up. We tracked down the photographer who would not tell us what it was he photographed. We asked originally to Amoco for the name of the artist who drew the picture. They said, "I'm sorry, we can't reveal the name of the photographer." We found the photographer. He would not tell us what he photographed, but he sent us an 8x10 copy from the original negative, and then we began to work on that, as well as with the ones we had photographed out of the magazine. And this is what Amoco told us. They told us several different things. First, they told us that it was a 9-foot-tall bronze statue. Second, they told us it was a 12-foot-tall bronze statue. And third, they told us it was a 9-inch clay statue. When we pressed for more information and became literally obnoxious on the phone, not accepting what they were telling us and wanting to see the original artwork, they refused and hung up on us. So, whereas I cannot say definitely that this is a live alien, I can tell you one thing: it is not a bronze statue. I can also tell you it's not a clay statue. And hair don't grow on the necks of statues. Next. You can see the moisture in the eye, the incredibly small detail in the texture of the skin and whatever this is, and in the eye. Look at the lip. You ever kissed anything like that before? I know a guy that did in the back seat of a Chevy. Next. Look at the incredible detail. I have never seen an artist in my life that was capable of doing this kind of work. But I haven't seen all the artists that there are either. Next. Look at the lines on the neck. Look at the detail in the arm. Next. Look at the hair on the neck. Can you see it? It's kind of hard to see, but it's there. That little fuzzy hair. Look at the lips. Look at the throat, the detail, the wrinkles. Next. Look at the moisture in the nostrils and tell me that's a bronze statue. Look at the moisture in the eyes. Look at the incredible detail in the folds of the eyes. Look at this bag under the eye. Next. I think they're trying to tell us something. Next. Next. These are letters from England that was a big hoax. Next. It purports that a alien craft crashed in the Kalahari Desert of South Africa is perpetrated by one guy named James Van Grunen. It's a total hoax. Don't believe it. If you want proof, write to me. If you think you're going to waste your time pursuing this, I'll give you the proof. Next. 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 Just keep on going right on through. Okay, next. Oh, this is significant. 1917, the Imperial Japanese Mission, record of the reception throughout the United States, the special mission headed by Viscount Ishii. John Dewey, professor of philosophy at Columbia University, he's the one who built our education system that is not teaching our kids anything. He said, first sentence in his speech, someone remarked that the best way to unite all the nations on this globe would be an attack from some other planet. In the face of such an alien enemy, people would respond with a sense of their unity of interest and purpose. Next. Knowing who John Dewey was, and knowing what he's done to our educational system, and knowing that this was written and planned a long time ago, this is probably going on. Next. This is from the report from Iron Mountain. Credibility, in fact, lies at the heart of the problem of developing a political substitute for war. This is where the space race proposals, in many ways so well suited as economic substitutes for war, fall short. The most ambitious and unrealistic space project cannot of itself generate a believable external menace. It has been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope of peace, etc., by uniting mankind against the danger of destruction by creatures from other planets or from outer space. Experiments have been proposed to test the credibility of an out-of-our-world invasion threat. It is possible that a few of the more difficult to explain flying saucer incidents of recent years were in fact early experiments of this kind. Next. By guys like this. Next. Or this. You might know who this is? It's John Lilly, one of the fathers of the CIA mind control methods. Next. Is this what's going on? Next. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars is the first chapter in my book. Once you read that, you will have a complete understanding of what's happening in one very important area. And you will get an understanding of what the elite think of us, the common man, the mass of ordinary, everyday people, which is what most of us really are. We're all special in our own way, but we are a part of the masses of people. They believe that we are cattle, that we do not use our intellect, that we are easily manipulated, that we will not solve the problems of the world because we are greedy scumbags. And because of that, we are nothing but stakes on the table for those who will use their intellect. And until we change that, they're going to treat us like cattle. And I've got to tell you right now, on a daily basis, we prove them right. Next. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., V, many others. Many movies. We've been bombarded with alien movies, alien commercials, an alien spaceship landing at the end of the 1984 Olympics to reinforce in our consciousness the creation of an alien threat that does not exist, or to wake us up to an alien presence that has been here for many years. It's not an accident that these things are happening. It's not an accident that you're seeing on your TV. Was ITT or ATT? AT&T, one world, one card. These aren't accidents. Right out here in the lobby of this church, you see a picture of the world on the bulletin board. And go, when you leave, just look what it says. Next. Don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not opposed to a one-world government at all. I think in the evolutionary future of mankind, it is absolutely necessary and unavoidable. What I'm opposed to is being manipulated into something I know nothing about, and knowing the fact that if I have to be manipulated into it, I'm not going to like it. And knowing that the best government that's ever been created on the face of this earth is going to be destroyed in the process. And that we're going to lose our Constitution and our Bill of Rights in the process. That's what I'm opposed to. I want to be included. I want to help them decide what this is going to be, so that I can be satisfied with whatever it turns out to be. Stephen J. Kurzweil, MD. I've met this man, I've talked to him, I've researched this case thoroughly. This is his credentials, his curriculum vitae. Look at who this man is. This is no flake. This is a medical doctor with many degrees, a lot of credentials and memberships in many of the medical society, what do you call them? Associations, I guess. He's also Phi Beta Kappa and an Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Medical Society. This guy has the credentials that most people would drool for. What happened to him? I'm going to show you his testimony here in a couple of minutes. What happened to him, he was approached by someone named Joan Thompson at not at a UFO meeting, to attend a UFO meeting. He said he really wasn't interested, but went because she was a pretty woman, and he wanted to meet her. He went with her. It was like a date. He said what he learned there astounded him. He never heard of any of that stuff. But he also met somebody named Bud Hopkins. Joan Thompson told him that she was an agent of the Central Intelligence Agency, and Bud Hopkins identified himself as also being an agent of the Central Intelligence Agency and recruited this doctor to help them work with abductees and report information to the Central Intelligence Agency. He worked with them for a while until he found out that Bud Hopkins had no credentials whatsoever, was an artist, a painter, but was hypnotizing people who had been abducted, was conducting group psychology therapy sessions with them, was extracting as much information as he could out of them and then dumping them like a hot potato. And this man, Stephen Kurzweil, MD, with all these credentials, reported Bud Hopkins to the New York State medical authorities, and nothing happened to Bud Hopkins. Stephen Kurzweil, on the other hand, was charged for being delusional, and they're trying to take his medical license away from him. because he told them that Bud Hopkins was engaged in this research of alien abductions that the government was covering up, and he was judged to be delusional. We have all the documentation, the medical reports, everything. Next. It's all in my book. These are the official charges that the state of New York brought against him. It's incredible. Next. Schizoid personality disorder. Grandiose and paranoid type. Next. This is his testimony, sworn under penalty of perjury, signed and notarized. It's in my book. It proves the assertion that I've been saying all along, that most of the people that you ever see on the stage of a UFO symposium are working for the government. When they have a show on TV like UFO Cover-Up Live, which William Moore participates in, who is an admitted government agent, with all the others, and then they give a phone number at the end for you to call in and tell if you've ever had an abduction experience, and you go to your phone and call the CIA and tell them that you have had one. That's right, gotcha. You guys better start being careful, and you better start listening to those of us who are really looking for the truth and not trying to bullshit you. We are being manipulated on a grand scale by people who know what the hell they're doing. And if we don't wake up, we're going to be wherever they want us to be, and only we're going to discover that that's not where we want to be. Next. This. Oh, in my original paper, The Secret Government, which I published May the 23rd, 1989, I said that there had been a military coup in the United States. I documented in my book. 3 other people have confirmed that they saw the same message that I did, and the message was, before Nixon resigned. Nixon was not going to resign. He didn't think that they could impeach him. And I don't know whether he could or not. Nobody will ever know because no trial occurred. But the Joint Chiefs of Staff sent a message to all military commanders of all the military forces, and the message said, upon receipt of this message, you will no longer accept any orders from the White House. Acknowledge receipt. That's unconstitutional. That is a military coup. Nixon was forced to resign because they yanked the military out from under him. They cut off his communications to his commands because those communication centers are under control of the military. In my book, it's documented. You no longer have to take my word for it. Nobody believed me when I published that at first. But now 3 other people have come forward and stated that they saw exactly the same message that I saw. And that's in my book. Their names, everything. Their statements, sworn statements. This is the sworn statement of David Race. It is notarized on the original. You can see the notary seal, which didn't photograph very well. Next. He also named 4 other witnesses that saw it with him. Richard Doty. This is extremely interesting. Richard Doty. Richard Doty was the agent in shadow called Falcon on UFO Cover-Up Live. I also found reference to a project called Project Mogul, which you have to remember that it was in July 1947 that the Roswell crash supposedly took place. You have to remember this William Moore, confessed government agent who researched and wrote the Roswell incident. It's Richard Doty, Falcon, who's been working with Moore for years to supply him information. Richard Doty is the counterintelligence agent for the Air Force Office of Special Investigation at Kirtland Air Force Base. These are the notes of an interview that Barry Greenwood did with Richard Doty. It's funny that Project Mogul, a project that released balloons on July the 3rd from Holloman Air Force Base, which floated in the direction of Roswell Air Force Base, on July the 3rd, 1947, and these balloons were coated with thin aluminum sheathing. Now go back and remember the description that Jesse Marcel gave of what he found in the field on Brazel's ranch. And the man in charge of that Project Mogul was Richard Doty's father. That's significant. We are now in the process of getting documentation through the Freedom of Information Act to prove this. Next. I'm saying that we can no longer accept that a UFO crashed on the basis of the evidence that we now have. We've got to find out there's something else to this. We have a Project Mogul that released balloons on July the 3rd near Roswell, New Mexico. It's coated with thin sheeted aluminum. No, it wasn't. No. No. They also released balloons from Project Mogul also in June, on several dates in June of 1947. What I'm saying is that Richard Doty is participating in putting out phony flying saucer information to the world, and his father was in charge of Project Mogul, that we need to look at this more closely. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I'm sure that it would make a lot of sense from what discovered that the government was trying to again put up with oil on it in an attempt to make it appear that
You don't understand. These balloons were also released in June of 1947. The crash at Roswell occurred in July. Well, you have to also understand that you're taking the word, you have no evidence, you're taking the word of an intelligence officer who may be participating in creating something for you to believe that doesn't exist.
let's talk about it later.
Listen to me very carefully. One of the best ways to bring about a one-world government and get you to accept the destruction of your Constitution and the loss of the sovereignty of this nation is to create an artificial alien threat from outer space so that all humanity will give up whatever they have to and band together to face this threat. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm presenting evidence to you that should make you want to do some more investigating before you believe anything. And I specifically stated at the beginning of this lecture, I don't want you to believe anything that I say or anything that I show you, but I want to create enough curiosity and maybe anger and maybe a lot of other things in you that you help me start looking for the truth. That's what I'm about.
Earlier, you said that you would explain why the government spent billions of dollars on stealth aircraft and other conventional aircraft with this technology that we have. Why are they so ignorant of the fact that we have this kind of technology, if that be the case?
I've already explained it to you, sir. Some people can't, and I know it's hard to put all this together. You saw that there's a population problem. The technology that they're hiding from us would make us live longer, would give us better lives, would give us a source of possibly free energy or next to free energy, would probably give us methods in which to kill most, if not all, illnesses and diseases. And their goal is to cut back the population. They're not suppressing cancer cures so doctors can get rich. They're suppressing cancer cures so more people will die. So that they don't have to come out and say, you and you and you up against the wall, it's your day to get killed. They make it appear to be natural, or as natural as they possibly can. That's why.
Can you talk about AIDS?
This is a letter no, that's in the book. I'm not going to get into AIDS today. That's in the book. This is a letter that was written to the White House to Mr. Fitzwater, who was Reagan's press guy. And what he wanted to know is who wrote the paragraphs about aliens that Bush inserted into the end of 6 speeches that he gave during his administration. Most people don't even remember that he said those things, but he did. Next slide. What Marvin Fitzwater wrote back was that the president himself inserted those paragraphs. They were not put in there by the speechwriters. One of the speeches was to Boston High School students and faculty. Next. In which he said, I couldn't, but at one point in our discussion privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children, wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet outside in the universe. Do you think all this stuff is coincidence? I hope you're beginning to wake up. He said this 6 times in 6 speeches in his administration. This is come together one world government stuff. This is alien threat from outer space stuff. 6 times, the president said. Next. To the General Assembly of the United Nations. Next. In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our difference worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war? What would a one world government do? Abolish war. What is the threat that will bring it about? An alien threat from outer space. Please wake up. Next. In my book, I document the things our own Congress and our own people have been doing to destroy the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and join the one world order. Document it. I don't just say it, I document it. Most people don't know what goes on in Congress from day to day. They can pass anything they want to and you would never know it until they come and bang on your door and throw you in jail because you didn't know it. Next. That's right. But they're not there because they know that most people aren't watching and don't give a damn. The backbone of hidden government. This is documented in my book, NSDDs, National Security Decision Directives, National Security Memos, the fact that they write memos and write law outside of Congress and the executive branch, and most of it is signed by auto pen, the president never sees it. Next. And next. And next. And these are some of the things that they've done. There's no time to go into it. Next. Next. This is the Soviet Union into a one-world government. That's from an organization called Free, put out by Johnny Stewart. The address over there, it's in my book. You want to know why you can't get the truth off of television, radio, or the newspapers? CFR owns, controls them. Barbara Walters, all of them are members of the CFR. Next slide. This is the super world government. I have the Bush administration. It's updated in the book of all the membership in the Bush organization. Next. This is George Bush. Notice Dan Quayle's not a member. Now this is serious. Their goal is a one world order, one world government, the destruction of the sovereignty of the United States, the merger of the United States and the Soviet Union. Why do you think our generals and admirals have been going back and forth to the Soviet Union and theirs have been coming back and forth over here? They're getting ready to do it.